everybody. Today I'm here with a very charming visionary author, Ayn Cates Sullivan, and we're going to talk about the legends and mysteries of the British Isles. So, Ayn, thank you for being here with me. And I would like to start with the Grail symbolism and its connection to the goddess archetype, because I know that this is the main subject of your latest book, The Legends of the Grail. So could you tell us about this connection of the Grail and the goddess?
So I've been interested in Grail legends for a long time. It started, we were speaking earlier, but it started with Kabbalistic studies, and I became very interested in depth and knowledge and how you put all the pieces back together again to form your own Holy Grail. And so in my explorations in the British Isle, what I realized I was missing were my own feminine archetypes. And so I went questing for them. And the first book that's out now is called Legends of the Grail, Stories of Celtic Goddesses. And these are mostly from the west of Ireland. I collected them mostly in the west of Ireland. And then I have a new book that's getting ready to come out that's called The Heroines of Avalon and Other Tales. But the reason I call it Legends of the Grail is because if you think about a grail for a minute, I don't know if you can see here.
Yeah.
A cup. You got a cup.
Yeah.
And it means that, in order to really receive the divine gnosis, the knowing, you have to form this receptivity so that the divine can come and find you, right? Mm-hmm. So in my quest for my grail, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for the missing feminine. I do believe, I think the grail can be many things. People talk about it as the blue stone, or they talk about it as all sorts of elixirs. Yeah. But in my Judeo-Christian world that I grew up in, I wanted to know where the feminine was. Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Okay, fine. I was working I was doing my doctorate, and I'm walking down the halls in Trinity College. Every single bust there of an important person was a white man. Mm. And I was saying, do I belong here? Where are the stories of my own gender? Mm. Not finding anything other than the stories of women who were burned as witches or, were enslaved or were furniture. And so I was so delighted when I started finding these stories, like Kaysar, who was the granddaughter of Noah, who wasn't allowed to board the ark because she's in the wrong lineage. And so she builds her own ark and sets sail to Ireland with her horses and her friends. Why not? And starts this tradition of Ireland. And I thought that was fabulous. And then I was interested in the goddesses that welcomed her to Ireland. Who were these beings? Eru, Bodla, and Bamba. These expressions of the land itself, who were inviting the poets and the mystics to come in. And so then you start to realize that there's this ancient tradition of the Tuatha de Dannan, which we talk about in the book, with the ancient wise beings who were poets and ovates or seers. And some of them became druids, and they were midwives and lawyers and wise people, and they really were equal in every single way with men, and they understood life. And so again, that's the grail being the cup of life. That was one of the reasons Rome really went after the Celts, particularly the Druids, and they wanted to wipe the Druids out, because if you can destroy the stories of a people, you can destroy a people. If you demonize the stories of the feminine, if you turn snakes and dragons into something that's evil, then you can subdue someone, even if it's not accurate.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about Druids is that they didn't write their stories down, right? It was all memorized.
Right. So in let's say if you were training to be a druid, you would it was usually a training that took about 20 years or so, if you even made it that far. And it would start out with learning 250 myths of your people, so that if, let's say, something difficult happened, there was an illness or something happened in the community, you would know how one of the gods or goddesses had walked through that path. You know, one great story is, say, Rhiannon, who was accused of murdering her son, and has to confess what she's done for 7 years, even though it's false. Her son's returned to her. And so you realize that even with the gods and goddesses, very difficult things happen, and yet they're able to walk through it and learn what they're meant to learn and become stronger than ever before. They become more and more miraculous. So the Druids didn't write things down, but they did. But it was secret. So they had a language, and it was called the Ogham, and it was called the language of the trees. And so when you would journey with a tree would help you understand a part of existence. So usually in the Ogham tradition, which is spelled Ogham, so you think it's Ogham, but it's Ogham. And usually start with the birch, because after an ice or flood or fire, the birch are the first trees to come, and so they start a new journey. So when you open to the White Lady, she'll start to show you how your journey begins. And so each tree will take you to a different place. So they understood when they would give each other a stick with a marking on it, that this is what would happen next. So it was a language of journeying. So it was an experiential. It wasn't written, as we would with Latin, but it was an experiential, living language. So the trees are magnificent teachers, and they help us establish true wisdom in ourselves, and they help us understand when maybe we're acting against ourselves, and will remind us to develop more self-love. And they're very, they hold us in a particular fashion. But each tree, when you walk through the door of the tree, it'll take you to a specific world. And the Drew in Gaelic it means tree, or usually oak tree. And so Druid comes from the men of the oaks, or the people of the oaks. Men and women can be Druids, but the people of the oaks. And so Druids were quite familiar with the oak ash and thorns were there. In those traditions, you're actually learning the language of the air, and the language of the water, and the language of fire, the language of earth, and how they always operate with elementals to create more and more and more life. And we're living in that every single moment. We just forget because we look at the news or something, right?
Yeah, it's about switching the program, right? No, but it's very interesting. Could you tell me more about this mythical tribe, Tuatha de Dannan? I don't know if I pronounce it right.
Yeah, the Tuatha de Dannan, and so it means the children of Dannan, and so if in Ireland there's a book called the Labor Gabala, the Gaelic, meaning the invasions of Ireland. And so there are these myths. Now, what's really interesting right now, just to the reason it's important now, is there's the guy named Brian Geigs who's been doing studies called Blood of the Isles. And from his studies, he's saying that there really is a root race that arose out of Ireland. And they tend to be very pale and have red hair, a little bit like you. So you might be one of the Tuatha de Dannan.
That would be nice.
They're also called the Sidhe, and it's spelled Sidhe. And they were known as the tall, magical ones. And there are all sorts of stories about where they came from. Some say that they came from ships, from another planet. Some people say they came from the land under the wave, Tiernanog, or Tiernaban, which is the blessed Isle of Women. That they came, and it might be that Danu came from Tiernaban. And when she came forth, she was interested in bringing her children to play out, to help the world soul activate. So there's something there in that region, actually all over the Celtic worlds, but particularly in that region, that are called the Albion plates, and they're like the blueprints of the planet. And so again, these are life blueprints. It's not about, we can go into talk about conspiracy theory and other things. There's a force that wants to poison the planet. But these were the people that wanted the planet to thrive. And we live in a place of duality, so there's always going to be opposition to that. But that's how we learn. That's how we grow. And so Danu comes, and her children, a lot of them appear in my book. So we have Anya, who's the goddess of light, and she, when you really get in touch with Anya, who's a sun goddess, and there are not very many traditions with solar goddesses who are just, they know who they are, and they're quite full of themselves, and they might choose to love somebody if they feel like it, but they might choose not to, and they're full and complete. If you really have your Grail, your chalice, you're full and complete no matter what happens, right? So, and then we have others in the tradition too, like for instance Gaia, which heroes would go and train with, because they would teach men how to work with the elements, so they would become the most powerful warriors. They could cast glamours, or they could make it appear like there were 10,000 men when there was only one. So the Tuatha De Dannan, who were very gentle people, and some of them were warlike, but for the most part, they really just wanted life to thrive. So when these more warring Milesians came, they decided to go underground. They were going to share the earth, but they were going to move into a different dimension. And we're kind of at a similar. These are interesting stories because we're at a similar point now. That there might be something that goes on where the warring people get apart, and the sort of more advanced people with their activated Merkabahs might have a different, location, energetic. So that's basically what they chose, and the Shi have been quite active recently, coming through portal places and making communication with poets and mystics and other people about their concern about what's happening with the earth and what needs to be done, and how portals can be used also.
Could you also tell me a bit about the legend of the Avalon? And I know that in your book there's another name for Avalon, the Tiernaban.
Yes, there's an ancient name. So Avalon is already, Avalon itself is an otherworldly island where there's a tradition of ladies of the lake, or otherworldly women, these specials, magical women, where they were trained. And so the older name for that, or an older Gaelic name for that, is Tiernaban, which is the realm of the blessed women, or the Isle of the Blessed Women. And so it's interesting. These realms, these blessed isles, are places that open up to you when you sip from the Grail. If you're blessed in a certain way, and you come with a pure heart, and somehow you're welcomed into that tradition. You're opening to the high priestess within you. If you're a man, you're not allowed on Tiernaban, unless they sometimes come over temporarily just for special occasions. But it is a land just of goddesses and women because really we've kind of forgotten this, but women awaken differently than them, and so we were being shown on these isles how that occurs. I mean, women already usually women are born with 8 chakras open, and a man's born with 3 open. So our training from the very beginning is about life and how we bring life to the earth. And it was, I think, probably one reason women were subjugated is because, you know, how dare women be in control of life, you know? But so in those places, in the place, this is where you learn sacred medicine. You know, there's stories of the apples and the sacred golden apples, and there were fairy folk that would help you understand how different herbs work, and also some people journey with different herbs. But it was always about understanding the cosmic feminine mindset, which you really don't find in any other tradition that I know of. If you go into the Kabbalistic tradition, you will find it with the teachings of the Shekinah. And so in the Hindu traditions, you'll find it, you know, if you're studying the traditions of, say, Lakshmi or Shakti and so forth. But in the Celtic tradition, it's very live and very, very accessible. Yes. And it was almost for a while forgotten. Anyone that held that tradition was killed for many years. And it's only recently that we've been able to bring those traditions back without fear.
And what about this other dimension, or this mysterious land, the land of youth? You also describe this in your book, and it's like the land of eternal spring, right?
Yes, and Tiernanog.
Yes. Oh,
It's a very Irish tradition.
I love the idea, you know, of this land of eternal youth and spring and.
Yes, exactly. And there's Tiernathon too, the land under the wave. I wonder sometimes if it's connected to Atlantis, the sunken isle, and the people that were able to actually flee from Atlantis. It might be connected. But in the tradition of the Blessed Isles, again, it's heroes on the Grail quest adventures. Quite often, the hero or heroine is taken to one of these Blessed Isles to learn, and sometimes they don't return. You know, you go and it's just so lovely that why would you go back to a place where you would age or you would become ill, or you know? So they're kind of thought of as these realms of paradise. And if you do Celtic shamanism and you journey, sometimes those guides will open those realms to you. So quite often, if you do a Celtic journey, they'll shake a silver bell, you know, in the hopes that Angus Og and Care will open the door, and you can fly with the swans into the Blessed Isles and have a taste, a little elixir. And it is said that the people that do that fly into these worlds, when they return, they have the spark of the poet in them, because they know, first of all, they know they're eternal. We never die. We change form, but we don't die. And then they know there's something more than this small, limited ego self, so they come back without fear. Why be in fear when you know it goes on forever? Yeah. You know? And they might also come back with a great deal of humility also, knowing that there's a massive cosmos that has intelligence that we need to stay aligned with. You know, I think what's important for women and for men is to remember how important and sacred these bodies are and the earth is. And to remember to go out, just like even now, you could go out and just touch one of the trees, whatever tree's close to you, just put your hand on it. Acknowledge its presence and its wisdom, and feel what it has to give back to you. Maybe write a poem with it, or hug it, or go to the ocean and walk beside it and feel the wisdom that resides in the ocean, the cosmic messages that are always sent to us. You know, you can sit with a blade of grass or the tiniest little flower, and it will share its beauty with you. If we can be receptive, our grails, our cups, if we can be receptive to these small messages, then we can open up and be receptive to these cosmic vibrations of love and peace and vitality that are pouring into us all the time.
Yeah, nice.